All right, this the whole zone thing is driving me crazy, and I spent the whole day taking a look at stuff. So I just wanted to sort of I'm kind of talking to myself about this. Let's see, shit, nine. Get this over here. Where are we at? Come up here. Click on zones, and we come down here, and we got this, which I initially liked, and as I look at it more, I dislike it even more. The problem is the whole thing is disassociated from the timeline. Um, uh, for new users, this has to be awfully confusing. Um, when I was dealing with it, I just found it clunky, and I mean it works and it's kind of cool. But a zone is two dates. The unit, which is actually these little marks down here on the timeline, how they're specified, decade, year, month, etc., and magnification, which is kind of elusive and confusing and unquantifiable. So if I go ahead, I'll go ahead and close this. And magnification is interesting because it is based on a couple of different things. Let me bring up this menu. Magnification is actually the manipulation or the distortion of pixels per unit, and unit is obviously dependent upon unit here. So when I magnify something between two dates, it could have um, different pixel widths. No, what am I saying? It would distort this number right here, um, which is initially set when the timeline is created and it's uniform across the timeline. So the magnification is of this number. And you can't negatively magnify something, I believe, I found. So uh, that's where that is. Now, let's get rid of this. So I was thinking that to get rid of this menu, or to do something that's a little more intuitive to a user, you could actually put something. Let me go up to this. Oops, that wasn't a good idea. Here, go up here. Put our camera up here, and we'll get rid of this. That you could actually put something at the top of the timeline, possibly under the legend, and that's a completely different kettle of fish. And you could put something up here within a separate div that would correspond functionally to something like this. And I'm going to switch over to Google Docs, and it would be the margin line here. But what you would have is you would have brackets for something like this that would correspond to date ranges that would correspond into the timeline itself. So you would have let me pull this down. So you'd have between, like, this would be 1800 and this would be 1900, and you could make them closer, and that would be 1805, 1800 to 1805, or 1850 or something like that between these two brackets. And obviously you'd have to set the units between that too. If you had multiple zones, you would have multiple bands, and this could come up on a menu choice, to deal with the zone. So if you had multiple zones, you'd have multiple bands like this, and you could move the whole. If you clicked on the middle of it, you could move the whole zone either further in the future or back to the past, and that's how you would manipulate zones. There's a couple of object things in here, kind of neat. But I wouldn't even know how to start to do something like that. and, and and to have the timeline change while these bands were being manipulated would just be fantastic. It would just be outrageous. I got a couple of things I was taking a look at. I have this, which is a band that can be resized. This is a jQuery, I believe, yes, and it's called resizable. So I don't know how this stuff works. So that's an example. And if this could slide back to the past or into the future, and it could have a tooltips for the dates that this thing is being manipulated into. jQuery also has this slider also. So I was just thinking if we could have a separate band up here that's like it's like word processing, setting margins and that sort of thing. That would be really cool. I'm just throwing some ideas out there to make this extremely intuitive and easy to use. Also, I could explain that with one of these little YouTube videos. I could explain that to anybody. I could explain that to a 3-year-old how to do that. So it's just a thought. Zones is driving me crazy because it's just such an odd thing. It's like this big square of mathematics. I'm dealing with these boxes, and the combination of the date ranges of the zones and the units in the magnification. It's really kind of an interesting mathematical maelstrom of numbers and concepts flying around. To make it very intuitive to the user would be really excellent.